All right, so let's move on to the questions now. So before we start answering questions, I want you to keep in mind what I said before, and that's to always have in your head what the author believes, what the main idea is, and never ever put an answer that would contradict the author's viewpoint. And also don't put an answer that wasn't discussed in the passage or something that is completely outside of the realm of the passage. So if you see an answer choice that wasn't discussed or it seems like it could be true but there hasn't been any evidence presented in the passage to support that, then it's definitely a wrong answer and never select that kind of answer. All right. So the first question says, the Bella Coola Indian legend best just illustrates the author's point that. So if you don't remember exactly which, because it's easy to get the Eskimo story and the Indians confused. So let's go back up to the passage and see exactly what it said about the Bella Coola Indians, and see right there. That's a great example of when highlighting really just saves you. Is that I highlighted the first sentence of that paragraph about the Bella Coola Indians right here. And it says that the wolf exerts a powerful influence on the human imagination, right? And then the rest of the paragraph talks about, it gives a specific example of that, which isn't necessarily required to answer the question, but it's there, right? So let's go back down and see if we can even answer the question just by looking at that first sentence of the paragraph. And it looks like I found a distractor right here. Answer choice A is a definite distractor. It says that humans know very little about the wolf. While that may be true, given the first sentence of the entire passage and what we've been talking about before, that's not what this specific question is asking for. This question is asking for this legend about the Bella Coola Indians. So that, it could be true, but that's not necessarily answering this question, okay? So sometimes the MCAT will have answer choices that are correct, could be correct, but they're answering the wrong question, okay? So now we know that the answer, so let's continue reading. It says, B says, wolves provoke fanciful thinking. And I think that's exactly what the topic sentence of that paragraph is saying, right? So we're going to go with B. Right. Okay, so let's see, 84. Question is, in the context of the passage, the word rigorous means, okay, and if you remember that the passage used the word rigorous up here when I was talking about clouds, right? It was said something about to be rigorous about wolves, you might as well expect rigor of clouds. And I said this before in the last passage. It just means that it's very difficult to be precise about clouds. If you can think back to when you were a child and you and your friend sat in the grass and you pointed at the clouds and each of you described the cloud to be something else. And I think this is exactly what the author is trying to say. That one person says that the cloud looks like something, another person says it looks like something entirely different. And the reason why, I mean, the cloud it's the same cloud. Both individuals are looking at the same exact cloud. And what we're doing is we're using our imagination to interpret the shape of the cloud into something else, right? And I think that's what the author is trying to say that we do about, or that these people did about wolves as well. That the wolf is a wolf, and it's a part of nature, it's a fact of life. It's its own absolute entity that is unchanging in and of itself. However, we humans have the ability to perceive the world through a biased lens. And that biased lens is what gives different interpretation of the wolf. Some people will, as the passage mentioned, will think that the wolf is a killing machine, and others will say that it's completely nice and it hasn't harmed a soul, right? So that's those two polar opposites of ideas just illustrates how interpretation plays into the story, right? So right, so in the context of the passage, unyielding, I don't think that's really correct answer. Harsh, not as well. We're not talking about a harsh standpoint in terms of clouds. We're just talking about it's not very easy to be precise or exact. That's why we have different interpretations, right? So we're going to go with C. good 85. Oh, so this is a classic MCAT verbal question, and it's a weakened question. You have weakened and you have strengthened questions. Weakened questions, you just want to look for the answer choice that will debase one of the author's claims, something that will cut it down, okay? So just keep in mind what the main idea of the passage is, and we're going to pick, in this case, this very specific case, we're actually going to pick an answer choice that would contradict the main idea, right? And you know that because it says weaken, okay? So let's see. That would weaken the author's contention that the wolf is less known than created by us. Okay, so basically the answer choice, if you distill it, it would say that the wolf is more known, right? Okay, because the author's contention is that it's less known, and this choice would weaken it, right? Okay, so A, the incident that the author described as a wolf's winging a piece of caribou hide around like a frisbee never in fact occurred. So, if that doesn't, we don't even know if it should have, it doesn't actually matter whether or not it happened, right? That wouldn't necessarily weaken his claim. Okay, so at least not enough. Usually when these weaken questions, it's like it completely contradicts what the author has been saying, right? And that wouldn't really contradict it. Okay, fine. It never happened, but it's more neutral than contradiction, okay? So B says the Eskimos have very little interaction with wolves and base their beliefs about wolves on folklore. Okay, so this would actually be the opposite of the answer to the question, right? This would be a very wrong answer, because this would support the author's point. That's exactly what he has been saying the entire time. That we actually, and this would even further it, right? It would say that they never even interacted with the wolves, and now we know that all their beliefs are based on folklore. That's what the author's been saying the whole time, so that's not the right answer, okay? So C says, the apparently intelligent behaviors that wolves exhibit and that people have always found so intriguing are entirely instinctive. So this neither weakens nor supports the author's contention. Author never spoke anything about that, right? There was never an argument on whether or not it was instinctive behavior. Okay, so that's just also neutral, right? Now we get to D. So basically we've knocked A through C out. So even if you don't understand exactly why answer choice D is correct, we know that A, B, and C are incorrect. But let's read it anyways. Scientists have produced a wealth of knowledge about the wolf, the preponderance of which corresponds closely to the beliefs of Eskimo and Indian cultures. Okay, so this would definitely contradict what the author's been saying, right? He's saying that scientists, which it looks like the author tends to put more trust in, right? Because he's talking about the truth the whole time. The author's been talking about the truth about the wolves, and science is something that tries to distill the truth about something, right? So, and he's saying that the scientists are agreeing with the Eskimos and Indians who like to make stories about them, right? So if you have those things together, then obviously that would contradict what the author is saying. So D would be the right answer. All right. In organizing a party of natural historians to study wolves, the author would most likely advise them to approach the wolf with what? Okay. So we want to be careful here and not pick an answer choice that wasn't described, right? So if there's another answer choice here that it sounds like it could be right, but it just was never stated in the passage, that we know that's not a correct answer, okay? So A, love, because contrary to popular belief, a healthy wolf will seldom harm a human being. That's not true. I can even point out exactly where the passage says that's not true, right? Somewhere up here. It says they have killed Indians and Eskimos, so clearly this is false, right? So B says caution because wolves are hunters and some have been known to kill humans. Okay, that sounds like it's a viable option. Let's continue going. Contempt because while they may be similar to domestic dogs, wolves are usually quite dangerous. I don't really remember reading anything about dogs. And I don't know. There might be. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't remember reading much about dogs. And also, I don't think the author would want us to be contemptful towards the wolves. That's just too strong of a. The author never gave us that extreme of a viewpoint towards how we should feel about wolves. So I don't think that's a correct answer. B is a much better answer than that. Okay. And then D says confidence because we now know much more about the wolf than we did in the past, and that's not true, right? That would actually contradict what the author has been saying the whole time, that we don't actually know much, right? So I think B would be the best answer. A lot of the times, I think this is not a great example of it, but a lot of times, you're gonna get a question and it looks like two answers are correct, and you're just gonna have to go with your gut on it. So I mean, in this case, B is definitely much more correct than C, but you're gonna get to some point you're gonna get to a question where it looks like two answers are correct. You just want to try to use as much of these tips that I've been giving you, and go with your gut and then move on. Don't dwell too much on one question, because then you won't have time to read the other passages and answer questions that are easier. Okay. So last one. In the 1928 edition of whatever, describes the wolf as a rapacious, flesh-eating animal belonging to the dog family, and states that the wolf lacks the dog's courage and loyalty. If the author were to include this description in the passage, it would probably be used to do what? Okay. So, I mean, if you just reading this description, I mean, it looks like it's coming out of like a piece of literature, to be honest. It doesn't look like it really belongs in an encyclopedia. Rapacious, flesh-eating animal. It sounds almost like, a supernatural, almost a fictional thing, right? And it lacks the dog's courage and loyalty. And those are, it's almost personifying the wolf as well. So let's keep that in mind when we're answering the question. So support the point that wolves are excellent hunters. I don't know if that was really a point made by the author. I think it was said, but I don't necessarily think that it was an important point. So, yeah, you don't want to stretch what the question says too much, okay? Illustrate the point that people often see wolves as being like themselves. I don't know if that was a point made at all, and I don't know if that would be something that people would want to be associated with, right? Rapacious and flesh eating. Okay, so let's throw that one out. Emphasize that we think we know about that what we think about wolves is often the product of our imagination. Okay, so this is something that this is a good answer choice, and the reason why is because it sounds like it's answering the question, and it's also linking back to the main idea. So one tip that I would use is if you're between two answer choices and you don't know which one is correct, as long as there's nothing wrong with either one, and there's usually something wrong with one of them. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a wrong answer. But as long as you can't specifically think of a reason why one of the two answer choices is incorrect, then pick the one that seems to support the main idea the most, right? And C, we could have not even read the question, 87. If we just read A, B, C, D, and I told you to pick the right answer, you would have picked C, okay? And that's because C supports the whole main idea of the story, all right? So I think that's a good answer. All right, so we're going to select that one.